I will be honest, I thought that entrance would be way cooler. And it is too short a distance to the microphone. So, anyway, welcome to Awkward Teenage Years. You guys, we're so happy to have you here. My name's Grant Bowen. I am your host tonight. How many people here it's your first time at Awkward Teenage Years? Wow, okay, great, okay, this is gonna be awesome. So, we are a live storytelling show. We've got a great lineup of guests tonight. Everyone's gonna come up here and they are gonna share true stories from their teenage years, from middle school, high school, stories about like first dates, for taking tests, failing tests, drinking, breaking bones, and of course, coming of age. It's always a lot of fun. We're really excited to have you guys here. I guess I'll do a little bit of riffing here just to get us going. So we just had Halloween. Did everybody have fun this Halloween? Yeah. Great. All right. That's cool. Very enthusiastic, apparently. So you're probably thinking, okay, he's going to come up and share some kind of weird little anecdote about a crazy Halloween that he had. The thing is, how many people here are from the South? By a round of applause. Okay. So I'm from Alabama, and I grew up going to like a Southern Baptist like mega church. And the thing about Halloween, where I come from, since it's the one pagan holiday that wasn't appropriated by the Romans, is that it's immediately just associated with like witchcraft and devil worship and everything. And so at my church, they were like, oh, we're not going to call it Halloween. We're going to call it the Fall Festival. And hey, guess what? You can come to the church on Saturday night and trick or treat here, and we're going to have games and carnival rides and everything so that you good Christian folks don't have to go out on Sunday night. It's weird. There was a very boycotty culture when I was growing up. Like, for example, Pokemon cards were boycotted at one point because they were made by Wizards of the Coast that make Dungeons and Dragons, which is apparently devil worship in some regards. This is the most embarrassing one. They opened a new yoga class at the community center, and I watched our head pastor, Brother Steve, get in the pulpit one week and say, this is promoting Eastern philosophy and it's leading people away from God and don't go, and then immediately come back the next week and just be like, so I talked to the people running the class and they're just stretching. My bad. You can go. It's fine. But the biggest one that had like an impact on me was when the first Harry Potter movie came out. 2001, I'm 13 years old. By that point, 4 Harry Potter books had already come out. I had read all 4 of them, and now this movie was coming out, and it was already expected to be like the biggest blockbuster of the year. And so Brother Steve gets in the pulpit and says, these books are about teaching kids witchcraft and Satanism, and it's a message we don't support in this church, and I'm going to encourage every parent in this congregation, do not take your kids to see that movie. And so my parents were like hesitant but concerned, and they were like, listen, is there anything true to like what Brother Steve was saying up there? You've read 4 of these books already. And I answered them honestly because I was like a goody two-shoes, but in my head, it's the first time I could feel in my heart like a real sense of like righteous indignation swell up. Like they're flying on brooms. There's dragons. They're waving sticks around and saying silly make-em-up words. How stupid do you think I am that there's any legitimacy to this? And of course, they looked at the books themselves and they're like, oh, this is dumb. You're fine. You can go. It's okay. So there we were in 2001 with parents saying, I don't know if I should let my kids read Harry Potter. Now it's 2022. I'm 34. I don't have kids yet, but we're talking about it. And for entirely different reasons now. I'm going, I don't know if I should let my kids read Harry Potter. Because I don't believe in wizards, but I do believe in trans rights. So, I don't know. Hey, Dad, I finished those books, but then I read some other stuff she wrote, and I think she makes some good points. Shit! Sit down, you're not leaving this room until we talk this. All right, on that note, we're going to get this show on the road. Are you guys ready? Thank you. All right, our first storyteller of the night. She's a comedian. I asked her how she wanted to be introduced. I am a vegan who dislikes avocados. Do with that what you will. Please welcome Srilatha Rajamani.
To be honest, I was worried about that intro, and then I saw a lot of like South Asian looking people, and I was like, they'll get it, so it's fine. Yeah, hi, I'm Srilatha Rajamani, and my story is about Diwali holiday. Now, I am from a family of like very devout Hindus, and in our case, I have to preface and say we were Hindus as religion, not as a matter of our identity, like which is a point that needs to be made clear these days. Now, my family did pujas for every Hindu holiday. Like a puja is when priests come to your house and they worship God for several hours, and then they eat the specially prepared food and then bless everybody. So, and Hindus, we have like special days, like about 200 days a year. So there was a lot of puja happening. And all of these events would happen. I grew up in Bombay, and all of these events happened at my grandfather's house. My grandfather was the head of a large family, 8 children, and during pujas, everybody would come to the house. I'll go more on his house later, but that was basically the setting of this entire event. Now, Diwali, by the way, is not a religious holiday, but in my family, it was. So typically what the Indians do during Diwali, Hindus do, is like you eat a lot. Like you just go eat tons of food, like watch special movies, maybe eat again, do fireworks. That was what Diwali was about. But in my family, it was about like women preparing meals for like 2 days straight. Meals for the family, but also meals for the priest, special meals for the priest. And then, we had to wake up at dawn. We had to wake up at Diwali is about lighting the lamps before sunrise, before the crack of dawn. And in India, dawn cracks very early. So we would wake up super early at my grandfather's house and all line up, take baths, and then wait for the priest. We couldn't even do firecrackers until the puja was over. So what was the point doing firecrackers in daylight? Someone please tell me. But no one could Anyway, that was how our Diwali was. And it was all still fun, it was really fun all through until the year I turned 14. And that is when that Diwali became a very traumatic moment for me. So it started off like a regular Diwali day, but early morning by the time I turned 14, by the way, I had my first period, and I was like a mature young woman. And so when that morning thing happened, my grandmother woke us all up at like 2 a.m. and we were all lining up, and then she would start putting the scented oil, which was our tradition in the family, like oil scented with herbs and spices, putting it on our heads, on our faces and bodies. We all had to line up to get that. By the way, that is being sold for a lot of money now in the body shop in corporate America. But my grandmother couldn't even give it away. She had to drag us by our ears and force it down us, okay? Like that was a thing. We all hated it. We all got it done, and we would be waiting to then go and take baths. Now that was when the traumatic moment happened for me. Like I am pro baths, by the way. I believe everyone But, my grandparents, this was because of the unique living environment my grandparents were in. Like, their home was a place, this is a very common Bombay thing of that time. It's called a chawl. Chawls were built by the British to house the mill workers, so they weren't exactly the luxurious accommodation. Every apartment, basically every unit had like one room and a kitchen. The bathrooms and the toilets were common on each floor, and everyone had a common courtyard. So that was where they lived. So this was the problem for me. I was a 14-year-old who had to be up before dawn to take bath in a common courtyard, like walk through wearing all those towels and everything in public, go into the bathroom. It was pretty traumatic, and I didn't want to do it. And my mom insisted, and she yelled at me, and it happened. You don't have a choice in India. Like I didn't even have a choice when I was 20. So I didn't have a choice when I was 14 either. I was very resentful that all of this had happened. And when after the bath, I was like sitting in the courtyard, so dark, and I was waiting. And then the priests started coming in one by one. 5 priests were coming in for this event. So basically what happens is the priests, they will come in and they will take a bath, and then they will come to the main room to do the puja. And I was sitting in the courtyard, and basically my grandparents' house was in the corner, very close to the bath area. So I could hear the priests go to the bathroom, take a bath, chant the prayers, and they would come out. I don't know if you've seen South Indian priests at all, but they have like tonsure half, and then they have long hair here, and they came out wearing the sacred ash, the kumkum, and the chandan, which is sandal, colors of like ash, like gray, red, and gold, basically. And they would come out and they would go to the room. And I was watching all of them until the last priest, Mr. Joshi, arrived. I heard him go to the bathing area. I did not hear the sound of water, but he came out in a few minutes after chanting prayers in there. And there was no water on him, but he still had like the sacred ash and the chandan and the kumkum. And I was like, oh my God, this man has not taken a bath. I watched him go to the prayer room. I watched him do the prayers, like chanting with all the priests. And I watched him eat the priest's special food. No one else had a chance to eat that day. We could only eat after the priests had eaten. And after a bath, I get hungry. So I was hangry, basically. I watched him eat, and I was watching him basically with like angry eyes at that point. How dare he, this hypocrite. If I knew there was a word called hypocrite, I mean, I'm English as a second language. I did not know, but that fits him well, right? So I was angry. But then the ultimate insult happened when he put in my grandmother's beautiful halwa. Now I'm going to just put a stop in all of the previous things for like a pause and just tell you what this halwa is in my family. Halwa is an Indian sweet, but in my family it's very special. My grandmother's super special recipe. She would have, it is like wheat flour mixed in sugar water and stirred and stirred and stirred until it becomes molten gold. And you can just slide it down your throat. It goes into your arteries. You'll probably die, but it's a great death. And this was very special. My grandmother was like too many. At Diwali, we had like 50 people in the family itself, plus neighbors, plus priests. My grandmother in the tiny chawl kitchen had to spend days making small batches of this, stirring for hours. And I saw this man who had not taken a bath eat that halwa in front of God while I had had nothing that day. And I was watching him with hate-filled eyes. And then I decided to go and complain to the one person in my family who could hear me out, my uncle Ravi, my dad's youngest brother. Like, he was a reprobate of the family. Like, he had studied arts instead of science because he wasn't like book smart. I had heard family members talk, like I had eavesdropped family members talk about him in concern because he had drunk beer. And I had also known that he had been rusticated from college because he had apparently blackmailed the chancellor. So he was. So I told my Ravi uncle, this is what happened. The priest did not take a bath. Mr. Joshi did not take a bath. He was like, are you sure? I said, yeah. And then he came back after like maybe about 15, 20 minutes and he said, let's go out to the restaurant. This was Azhar Bande-Ali near my grandparents' place. We had never been there because we visited grandparents. We eat grandparents' food, right? So we had never been there. But Diwali day especially, no one would go to restaurants. Like no Hindu would. How could you? Like they will serve food with onion. You can't eat onion on Diwali day. That's my family's rule. We had never been there. He said, let's go. I'll give you masala dosa. And I was like, sure, let's go. And I was like, uncle, can you afford it? Because even I knew at 14, Ravi uncle did not have a lot of money. Blackmail does not pay a lot, apparently. So, and he said, no, it's okay, let's go. And next few years, Diwali time, he would take us to Anand Bhavan while the rest of the family were waiting to eat their meal after the priest. So that was really, those Diwalis were really joyful for me. And then I found out, like when later from him, like maybe a few years later, that what he had been doing was blackmailing Mr. Joshi for money. My grandfather does a lot of puja. He was a source of income for Mr. Joshi. Grandfather would have killed him if he had known he hadn't taken a bath. So it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. I heard later that Mr. Joshi had quit being a priest and he became a realtor, and presumably he was taking baths because no one likes a stinky realtor. So the ultimate sequel to This does have a very odd, kind of like a sequel, I guess. I was in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. My mother is visiting, and we did Diwali again. This was my first Diwali with my parents in 25 years since I left India. And I was telling my mom about this, and she laughed. But then I also said, I miss grandma's halwa, it's just a thing, I really miss it. And she said, oh, it's easy, you can make it. And I was like, how? And then she said, your grandma used to make it out of a mix. So, yeah, that's it, you guys. The whole holiday is a fake, I tell ya. I'm Srilatha. Thank you.
One more time. Oh, I was like, where'd she go? One more time for Srilatha, everybody. That's amazing. As a Southerner, I can also relate to holidays with grandparents who make things that will probably kill you down the road. So that meant a lot. And also, the story, I'm committing the cardinal sin of telling somebody else's story. I have a friend who used to be an usher at a Broadway theater, and one night the second act had started, so he was getting ready to go. He's in the bathroom washing his hands. He hears somebody come in, go into the stall, and then start to leave. He's still washing his hands. He start to leave without washing their hands. And he just rolls eyes. He's like, dude, wash your hands. And he hears the voice go, excuse me? And he turns, and it's Jerry Seinfeld. and he goes, you want me to wash my hands? He's like, yeah, because now he can't back down. And so Jerry Seinfeld washes his hands, turns to my friend and goes, there, can I go now? So I've literally thought for years, like, Jerry Seinfeld does not wash his hands in the bathroom. So, take that home with you. One more time for Srilatha. All right, our next storyteller, we're going to get the show on the road. Our next storyteller is a comedian and a storyteller. He has 2 albums out. His latest one is called Why You Should Be Happy. He has been on The Moth. He has also been on This American Life. We're very excited to have him here. Please welcome Jeff Simmermon.
Okay, guys, this is great. I'm so glad to be here. God, finding out that Jerry Seinfeld doesn't watch it. That's like a couple cuts below finding out Bill Cosby was, you know what I mean? It's so against the brand, Also, a thing that I related to in the last story as a Southerner is I was like, wow, I've never really known much about Diwali. I'm learning a lot. This sounds very different. But then you said you were coated in an oil that had been suffused with herbs and spices, and I was like, yeah, we've done that in the South. It's fried chicken, but we do it, Oh God, it's so good to be here. I had a baby. My wife and I had a baby 11 weeks ago, and relax. It's just gonna turn into another fucking person, I'm excited about it. You shouldn't be, my child is gonna make it so your children can't experience air conditioning, So he's gonna use it all up. It's where this earth is going, and I won't be there to see it, but he will. It's just how it is. Nobody was more frightened about fatherhood than me. I just couldn't believe that it was coming. I still can't believe it. It feels like we found this weird little raccoon in the forest. It really does. And that dude, okay, that's not a father. That dude has obviously not gotten laid. But not with that cool shirt. But when I was a teen, I just wasn't ready for fatherhood at all. When I was a teenager, this is who this guy is, okay? When I was 16, just gotten my driver's license, and when you just get your driver's license, you'll drive anywhere. My mom was having a colonoscopy, and so she needed somebody to pick her up from the place. So I drove her to the hospital, waited in the waiting room, and they do it up pretty good with the anesthesia, especially what 1990, what's that? 6, so it was a blunt instrument back then. But I'm sitting there in the waiting room and I'm reading The Stand, by Stephen King, thinking, wow, wouldn't it be weird if a plague took over the earth? you know, and then so the nurse comes out and says, hey, your mother's done. She's just lying on the table right now. It's going to take a while for her to come out of the anesthesia, but if you like sit in there with her, you know, it'll feel good for her to see you when she wakes up. And I was like, okay, yeah, great. And so I went in there, and there's my mom lying there in the paper gown, and they left the fiber optic camera on the table. It was coiled up, it was clean, they washed it, you know, but they took the like sleeve off it or whatever. And it was still on, and I could see what the camera could see on the monitor. And like I said, it's 1996. They just invented these things, you know, and I was just like, this is crazy. Wow, what is the resolution on one of these things? Like, how big a dot can this thing, could it pick up like the period from a book? Could you perhaps read text through a fiber optic camera like this? Well, there's really only one way to find out. And so I took it, and I'm holding it on the book, and like, oh my God, look, the dark man strode down the dusty holy fucking shit. You know, like, he turned into a rat or whatever, you know, like, and right then a nurse walked in, and I'm holding it, it was just like, and a nurse came in and she goes, what are you doing? And you know when you're so busted, and you get busted, it makes you so mad. And I was like, well, what are you doing, is what I'd like to know. And she said, put that down, that costs millions of dollars. And I said, oh, I was so indignant. I was like, oh, really, millions of dollars? Is that why you just left it balled up on a table and let a teenager in here? Huh? Is that how you treat the thing? My dad had been yelling at me a lot about the way I treated the things I thought was important. And I was like, is that how you treat things that are important to you? You just leave them lying around and on? And she was like, shut up. She's like, you don't have a leg to stand on, and you know it. Put that thing down right now. Oh my God, if your mother was awake to hear this, she would be mortified. And then she just leaves, and I hear from the operating table, my mother says, I was awake for all of that. I am mortified. So she went home and told my dad, and my dad just blew me up, you know, like he was like, Jeffrey, what the hell is wrong with you? And I was like, what do you mean, what is wrong with you? What's wrong with them? They left it out. And he said, Dad, it's an important piece of equipment. I was like, people keep saying that. I say if that was a bike, they would have left it out in the rain, okay? So I was doing them a favor, you know, and some indignant shit like that. And my dad was like, I was like, why? Why should I not do this? There's no sign, nobody there to say. He said, there were just things about adult life, Jeffrey, that you don't have to figure out, right? You just know them and you don't do them. Nobody needs to write it down because it's so stupid to have to write it down. Like, you should just know these things and not do them. And I was just sitting in my room just seething, listening to Jane's Addiction or some shit and being like, you know, the adult world is so crazy. You know, they act like, you know, there's all these rules you got to follow, and if they're so important, they never write them down. How am I supposed to know? You know, is this you just, when you grow up, do they just whittle your imagination away and like shave all the possibilities off of you until you just turn into this thing that like pays taxes, you know, remembers college sometimes? As a 46-year-old, I'm here to tell you, yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, I was just like, I can't believe this. And then, so that was like back in the 90s. So time goes on. My father and I develop a healthy. Donald Trump was terrible for the country, but he was great for my relationship with my father. And every other day I'd call him and be like, what the fuck? He's like, I don't know, Jeff. You know, like for 4 years. And now, so in 2020, my dad developed ALS, and I took care of him as he became paralyzed and died. He's gone now, and I miss him so bad. And I it's gonna get funny again. But it's just, and it sucks to have this kid, and I can't call my dad and be like, what do I do? You know, and I still didn't feel like ready to be a father or anything. We were doing IVF as my dad was dying. 2020, I forgot about COVID for like a whole month in 2020 because we were just busy with other shit. And so right after he passed away, my wife and I rented a little house by the beach. It was near my mom, so we could be there to help out with my mom, but we're by the beach. And we brought her mother down to spend a week with us. And my mother-in-law they only made one of these, okay? She's this tall. She's from a little tiny village in Greece. And she's a painter, and she's 78 years old, and dude, it is impossible for her to give a fuck about anything. Nothing. And we spent 2020 taking care of my father, and she spent 2020 getting really into weed. Like real into it. And she told us, I used to only smoke it when I made love, but this stuff is incredible. She'll say any old fucked up thing. And so she's been on the same learning curve that we've all been on since here, but she's in her 70s, and it's exhausting. She gets real high and then calls us up. And she'll get real high, and she'll text us, and it says, quick call. And what that means is call quick. It's going to take as long as it takes, you know. And so you call her, and we were getting ready to like meet up with some friends for like the first time in 2 years, and she was like, quick call, and I was like, really? We got to go. And she's like, no, you must call me right now. So I called her up and said, what's going on? And she's like, well, I have realized that I am completely handicapped when it comes to my use of color in my artwork. I am a screaming fraud. I have been thinking it for decades. And I now understand this so clearly. And I was like, do you? You know what I mean? Like, and she's like, no, you don't understand. I can perceive shades of blue with this marijuana in my system that I could never see. You have no way of understanding what I'm talking about. And I was like, no, I do. I fucking understood you since I was 16. Get with the program, you know? She is 2 weeks away from calling us up and being like, did you know if you take the dark side of the moon and the Wizard of Oz and put them together? And, oh, Jesus. So we're in the beach house, you know? And the other thing, she loves to drink milk because she was 4'10" when she moved here from Greece, and through drinking American milk, she made it all the way up to 5'1" at age 18. So she's a believer. So we're in the Airbnb, we're by the beach, you know, it's great. We're going out, so the last day is my wife's birthday. We checked out, and you know, you take all your groceries and you put them in the car, and we're like, well, fuck it, let's sit on the beach for a while, because we're gonna go back to my mother's house and have a birthday dinner later. So we go to the beach, we're watching dolphins, and her mind is just blown. Also, we've been giving her gummies all morning, and she's shaking them off like King Kong with tranquilizer dice. You know, like, whatever, bring them on, you know? Can't stop me. And she swore she wasn't feeling anything, but I think she was, because I got up to be like, I'm gonna go to the car and get something to drink. Does anybody want anything from the car? She goes, oh yeah, bring that gallon of milk that's been in the trunk all morning. The gallon of milk that it's 1:30 in the afternoon. It's been in a metal trunk since 10 o'clock. I don't even think it'll pour out of the hole anymore, you know? She said, just bring the milk. What is wrong? I like milk. And I was like, so, okay. You know, I brought it. So she just sits there, slugging a gallon of room temperature milk and hitting a vape pen and watching dolphins all afternoon. And I was like, okay, you know, do you. And we're driving to my parents' house, and I guess my mom's house now. And we were driving back, and she leaned forward from the back seat and said, hey, like we'd been talking about it all day, you know, she said, hey, how do you think Stephen King's son is going to do after that dog attack? And we're like, what are you talking about? And she goes, I heard on the radio last week, Stephen King's son was assaulted by a dog and it ate his buttocks. And I was like, no, he didn't. And that, all of a sudden, all three of us are screaming. She goes, yes, he did! Erica, Google it! And so my wife is Googling it, and she's like, no, Mom, I can't find anything. It's all about Cujo. I really think we would... And she's like, you never believe me. You think Google can solve every problem, don't you? And I was like, well, you just fucking asked. And then I said, Erica, let's make this easy. Google any picture of Stephen King's son in a chair, okay? If he's not on a kickstand, then this story is bullshit. And we're traveling at highway speeds. All three of us are screaming right now. We got back to my mom's house and just agreed to never discuss it again. And I talk about it all the time, but just not in front of my mother-in-law. But we get back and we're just like, all right, we need to nap. There's several senior citizens in this home. There's been a lot of yelling. It's nap time. So I go to get my mother-in-law set up. And she says, could you open the window for me, please? And I was like, no, we don't do that. We have central AC in here. And we just don't open the window in the summertime. And she's like, what? I want some air. And I was like, there's tons of it outside. Just, go if that's what you want, She's like, I just want a little air. And I was like, listen, my father was a home inspector. He was a CIA narcotics intelligence analyst for 20 years, and then he became a home inspector. Okay, so if there's one thing I have to do to respect my father's legacy, it's respect the HVAC efficiency, right? We don't open the window and let all the air out. I learned that from him, at least. And she's like, oh, okay, whatever, fine. And I got up to go to the bathroom just right before the nap, and I smelled. Guess what I smelled in the hallway? Yes, weed. She's hitting a weed. She's hitting a bowl in my bedroom. I haven't smoked a bowl in that bedroom since I wore that shirt. And that's the other thing. Okay, she's shitting on the HVAC efficiency, and you just don't smoke marijuana in the house if that's so hard for you to stick to. Go outside. It's been decriminalized in Virginia. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And she was like, what? What's the big deal? It's not a big deal. And I was like, it is in this house. Stop it. And she's like, oh, I wish you just need to unwind, man. You're too uptight. And I was just like, I'm uptight. Listen, there are things about the adult world that you don't have to write down, all right? You don't have to be told not to smoke weed at your son-in-law's mother's house. You just don't do it. You don't drink hot milk on the beach. You don't make up lies about Stephen King's children. And you don't get high at your son-in-law's house on your daughter's birthday. You just don't. So, I don't know. I don't know anything else about this, but I'm ready to be a father now. All right, take care.
Oh my God. That was hilarious. That was great. Oh man. Hey, can you hook my mom up with your mother-in-law's weed guy?
Don't open the door.
No, I think my family needs it. Let's just swap burdens here.
Be careful, it's a monkey's paw.
Oh, I am sure. One more time for Jeff Simmermon, everybody. Oh God. Oh, that's terrible. It's just gonna be another person. All right, our next storyteller. She's a New York-based storyteller. She has a documentary that's out or coming out. It's out. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called The Fabulist. We had her way back when we were doing the show on Twitch at the height of the pandemic. I'm really excited to have her here in person for the first time. Please welcome Sandi Marx.
I want you to know that I am 66 years old and I smoke pot every fucking night. So there it goes. But I don't, and I do it inside. So don't come over, I guess. That's right. I keep it in my own backyard. Oh God, look at this. I never knew, I still can't tweet, but look at me tweeting here in high school. Okay. All right, so I went to high school in Forest Hills, which is in Queens. I don't know if any of you guys know that. And it wasn't like a typical school. We didn't have like that Friday night lights vibe with we didn't have a football team. We hardly had any sports. There were basically two kind of groups. One was all the kids who wanted to be in the Westinghouse Science Fair. That's how old I am. That's what it was called. Then it was changed to Intel. Now it's Regeneron, I think. I don't know. But there were all these brainiacs who all they wanted to do was come up with nuclear fission, or I don't know what that is, but that thing. I don't know. And then the other half of the student body, we just put on these lavish musicals called Sing. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but apparently it was popular enough to actually become a movie about this thing. And what it is all the grades, each grade puts together an original musical with songs of our favorite like Broadway shows and pop tunes and put lyrics to it, create a story, put on a show, and then we get judged by judges who pick the best grade. Is that not the nerdiest fucking thing you've ever heard? That this was what the mark of our high school was, who's going to put on a really good show? And I don't think it would be a hard stretch for you to imagine that I was, based on this costume, that I was not coming up with a computer system like Bill Gates that I barely could take any higher level anything, even when I got to college. I was busy like, I was like what we call a gleek now, like that show speaks to me because that's what I am. I was just the asshole in the lunchroom who was like, if you know, like, just gross. But I have to boast that our high school did have some acclaim because some of our graduates were Simon and Garfunkel. That was I just dying to know if they were in Sing. That would make me so happy. And then Jerry Springer, a real genius. And you're all too young, but there was a guy named Captain Kangaroo who had a children's show. You can Google it later. He had like these ridiculous, Nero bangs and gray hair, and he looked like real molesty. I don't know. If you see his picture, he has like mutton chops, and he looks ridiculous. He looks like he's diddling somebody. I don't know who, but anyway, that's another story. Anyway, so I really was a major participant in all of this stuff. Now, I'm going to show you Exhibit A. There is no Exhibit B, so just let this burn in your eyes. This is me when I thought I was a real smoke show, okay? Now, I was supposed to be sexy, but I wasn't. I don't think I have to tell you that. And I thought if I wear those tights and that fur boa, I was going to exude, come on, boys, on yours, right? Now, the truth is, I was so deeply insecure about myself. One reason was my nose was growing faster than my tits, like much faster. So the boa was like giving me some sort of courage because I could like fling it around and just sort of say like, don't look over here, just look. Anyway, but I absolutely loved doing these shows, and that was sort of my thing, and it got me through high school. It made me feel like, yes, there is something that I'm really good at, that I really love. I'm going to be an actress. I want to be a dancer. I'm going to go out in the world. I want to do great. But one of the things, and I think this is my greatest skill, is I'm very self-aware of my lacks, okay? And when I say lack, I lack talent to a certain degree. I was only like sort of talented, and I wasn't good enough looking to do, like back in the 70s and the 80s, when you would term a character actress, it was somebody who looked like Mary Ann in Gilligan's Island, as opposed to Ginger, who was the really beautiful one, and Mary Ann was gorgeous, so they weren't like looking for average looking girls, and I thought, you know what, I'm the kind of person who can assess a situation. So I thought, like, if I were in a beauty pageant, I would show up on the first day, and I would look around, and I'd say, okay, you're going to go for Miss Congeniality, because you're not going to win. So I had, like, a self-awareness, okay? It was like my armor. I knew what to do. So what I did was I studied. I went to NYU. I was in the drama department. I worked really hard. I wanted to be an actress so badly. I did fix my nose. It didn't make a difference. I still looked the same. It was just a little shorter. But I think if you feel a certain way, you're exuding the same face. My hair is still exactly the same. It's a hot mess. So anyway, so what I did was I started going on auditions. And if you didn't have an agent back then, you read this magazine called Backstage. I don't know if it's still a thing, but it was called Backstage. And it came out on Thursdays. And all of us losers who didn't have agents would look in the back for different like calls, like, there'd be some kind of actor's call. And one of them I found said, looking for actors and actresses with a great personality who can sing and dance. And I thought, well, my singing and dancing is weak, but I know I love throwing confetti in people's faces. This I can do. And it was a job to sing telegrams. Okay, now, back in the 70s, before Facebook, before you had hundreds of strangers telling you how happy they are that it's your birthday, the only way you could wish somebody a happy birthday was by sending them a card, Hallmark, only Hallmark. We didn't have any of this papyrus, whatever that is. So it was just a Hallmark card. Or you can send flowers. And then someone got this genius idea of let's do a throwback to like the 1940s when, people would get telegrams like in a restaurant or something. You'd see somebody show up with a little hat and they'd say, let's have people sing telegrams, and then why don't we even go further and have balloonograms, and we'll have stripograms, put a gram after anything and just go do it. So this company, that's what they did. They did grams, different kinds of grams. So they needed people to sing. And I thought, okay, I need money. I am desperate. I am so broke. This is going to be great. So I go to this office in Midtown Manhattan, and if anyone has seen Broadway Danny Rose, This is what we're talking about. It is an office that has fake wood paneling, and it smells like cigars and cigarettes because everybody smoked everywhere. And there was a guy who was sitting there who looked really greasy, and he had like crumbs on his blazer with big lapels and a beige shirt and like a fat tie. And I thought at any minute someone's gonna walk in like making balloon animals or something. I don't know what was happening. And he basically said, "Sit on down, dear." And he just was leery looking with his, and he says, "All right, now let me tell you what the job is. You're gonna have a good sense of humor because you're gonna wear a costume that you're gonna pick out of that closet." Meanwhile, there was this costume closet that if you've ever seen The Devil Wears Prada, that, you know, like the Vogue closet, well, that's what this was, only filled with like furries and like Wonder Woman and all sorts of shit, like costume after costume, everywhere, costumes. I was like, I had stars in my eyes. This was so exciting. Because who doesn't love Halloween? Who doesn't want to get dressed up? So he goes, you got to put on a costume. You have to write a song about the person that you're going to be, you know, celebrating, that's been, you know, bought by their partner or their friends. And then you're going to put it on a cassette. I hope you all know what that is. It's a small plastic thing. You use a pencil. Okay. You're going to put it on a cassette. And then we're going to provide the champagne, and you're going to show up wherever they need you to be. It could be in a house, it could be in a public place, and then you're going to sing it, you're going to hand it off. The agency will pay you $100, which is a lot of money, and then you'll get a tip. And I said, sign me up. This is great. I want to do this. This is fantastic. So I started getting gigs right away. So the first one was for a guy, and when I say guy, I mean a real bro, and he was turning 30 years old. And he worked at Bank Leumi. Have you ever heard that? Okay, so it's an Israeli bank, and it's in Midtown Manhattan, and his friends all chipped in. They want to surprise their friend Steve with this telegram, and they requested that I come as a Playboy bunny. Okay, so I'm thinking, really? In a bank at 10 o'clock in the morning? Okay, this sounds great. A little misogyny, kind of gross. Perfect, I'm in. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, yeah. I'm a whore. I'll do it. Okay, so I get all the information about the guy. Like he plays tennis and golf and a real snooze fest. He got an MBA. His MBA bullshit. So okay. So I had to make up the song. So I make up the song. It was not easy to Bob Barbaran. Okay, this is not easy to Steve. Okay, so I get the material, and then I put on a raincoat like a dirty old man on the subway, and I'm wearing the Playboy costume, except I don't have on my bunny ears, thank God, in the subway. And I get to the bank, and I can't like even have a shot of tequila, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And then I go into this conference room, and there were like 30 all men sitting there, bros, every swinging dick that's sitting there, they're all there, like red suspenders. In the early 80s, they all wore red suspenders, late 70s, like this is before Wall Street had all its crashes. They were just sort of building up. So they're all sitting there, they all thought they were like masters of their universe, you know. And I don't know, I went into automatic pilot. I jumped up on the conference table. Who does that? Like the girls, I was never one of those girls at a bar who jumps up on the bar. I always thought that was disgusting, but there I am. I'm jumping up. I've got now on this costume that was sort of, well, you can't tell underneath my boa, but it was very tight boned. It was an actual Playboy bunny costume. And the tail and the little, like, just because it's formal, cuffs and the ear, you know, the bunny ears. And I loved it. If I could be a Playboy bunny on that particular day, I would have said, sign me up for that, because I just loved it. I felt very empowered, even if these guys all looked like they wanted to like throw me down and tear it off. I didn't care. I was just so excited to be there. So I get up on the table and I just look at the birthday boy and I start singing, Steve, 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 Steve. I barely come up with any words. It's like, you know, and your friends all love you and you're Steve, Steve, Steve. And I was so mediocre, but I didn't care. I was so happy. And they seemed to be really happy. I don't know if they just thought I was a moron, but I didn't care. So, all right, so I'm done. I take like a bow, and I somehow, very undignified lady, I climb off the conference room table. I think I like got on one of those roller, you know, like the chairs with the rollers on the feet, you know, I'm like rolling off it. But then I got a $50 tip on top of the $100. And I was like, okay, I'm in. just give me more, give me more. I couldn't fuel it enough. So I started working a lot. I did a lot of children's parties, which were kind of easy and hard at the same time, because all these like really smelly kids would like sit on your lap and pull on your ears if you were an animal or a polar bear or whatever the fuck you were. But I didn't care. I was getting a lot of money. And then finally, one day, the boss says, all right, Sandy, I got a new gig for you. It's Sheila and Arthur, I think it was Wiseman, Sheila and Arthur Wiseman's 50th wedding anniversary. And Arthur wants to surprise his wife with a special greeting and a song, and he loves the Muppets. I'm like, okay, the Muppets. It's a total disconnect. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I love the Muppets. Who doesn't love the Muppets? So, and I'm praying it's going to be my favorite Muppet. This is the only imitation I can do. Kermit the Frog here. That's it, that's all I know. So I was hoping I'd be Kermit, but no, I'm not going to be Kermit. I'm going to be Miss Piggy. Okay, now I know she's great. She's a national treasure. Everybody loves Miss Piggy. But at that point, I wasn't necessarily on board. I thought she was really, like, very aggressive. I thought, you know what, Kermit, you could do better. That's just what I was thinking back then. Maybe now, not so much, but back then. So he says, all right, come. It was July, I might add. This is July. He says, come to the costume shop, pick up all your stuff and the champagne, get to work. So I pick up this ridiculous costume. I mean, it was a lot of stuff. If you can picture Miss Piggy, and I get it all home, and I start working on the song. I don't remember what it was at all. And then the night of the thing comes. It's going to be a Saturday night. It's the middle of, like one of those hot dog day New York hot summers. And I have to put on, first it's a fat suit. And then on top of the fat suit goes a ball gown, okay, like Beauty and the Beast ball gown with like lots of layers. And then there is opera gloves. There is a set of pearls like Barbara Bush or anyone, like a Flintstone would wear. Huge pearls. And then these strange, like hoofy-looking shoes. I don't know what they were. And then the pièce de résistance was I had a head, Miss Piggy's rubber head, that had tiny eye holes, tiny nose, tiny mouth. You could no peripheral vision, so you almost need like a cane and a dog to walk you. And then on top of that, I had to put a wig, and on top of the wig, I had to put my tiara. Quite a beauty. And then to finish the look, something exactly like that, a huge stole, which I thought, okay, well, at least I got the stole. So, all right, now I have to get down. I was on the Upper East Side, staying in a friend's apartment, tiny apartment. I had to get down to Chelsea. It was called Chelsea Place, which was a seriously popular restaurant back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was kind of like, have you ever been to ABC, the rug furniture store? They have a restaurant downtown in the Flatiron District, and then they got really smart and they started selling furniture while you're eating. Well, that's what this is. It's a restaurant in Chelsea and a bar, very popular bar. But they figured, you know, let's double down. If we don't sell the veal piccata, we'll sell an armoire. So they have furniture all over the back of this restaurant. So people go in there, you know, on a date, and they could come home with a desk set. I don't know, whatever they want. So it's very popular, and it's got good food, and it's a real scene on a Friday and Saturday night. And I'm not really thinking about any of that. I'm just thinking about, do I know the words to the song? Am I going to be able to get everything on? And I've got to get downtown. So I have to take a cab because I don't like putting costumes on in public bathrooms, because back then, as probably is now, the bathrooms in restaurants were always small, and most of the stalls were taken up by girls doing lines of coke off of their friends. So you couldn't even get into a stall. It was like crazy. So I put the costume on at home, except for the head, and I'm not that crazy. And I took a $20 bill, which was basically all the money I had, and I stuffed it in my, bodice, because I knew I needed cab fare, and I was going to get a tip. So probably a $16 cab ride, and then I would get money to get home. So I get down there, get out of the cab, I'm right in front of the restaurant. It's one of those restaurants, it's so crowded, people are pouring on outside and they're all smoking. But meanwhile, you could smoke inside. Everyone was smoking everywhere. You didn't have to be outside to smoke. So I'm looking in and it's so crowded. I get my head on, I get my hair on, I get my crown on, got my stole on. It's 80 degrees at night. The rubber head is already making me sweat like a pig. Seriously. I open the door to the restaurant, and as soon as I open the door, I am hit with a wall of that wafting smoke. And the sweet sounds of Donna Summer, I think, singing like, hot stuff, give me the hot, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, I had to take a minute to like settle myself. Now here's the thing, I'm walking in, I want to go to that little station where the hostess is. Nobody even notices me. I'm a pig in a bar. A big pig, a famous pig. They all know this pig, and no one even is looking at me. And I can barely see the hostess because the smoke is going in my eye holes. So I'm kind of like creeping down, and the hot stuff is going, and I am freaking out. So I get up to her station. And she looks up, and if any of you have been dissed at a restaurant, and I've had a long career of having people not pay attention to me, partially because I'm short, people like bartenders, they don't look at me. I have to get Jeff to get me a drink. Like, nobody sees me. So I go to the hostess, and she looks up at me like this. Yes. Nothing? I don't get even a reaction, or like, why are you dressed like that? It's not Halloween. She goes, yes. And I said, I'm here and I told her about the birthday party. And she said, oh, they left. It was too noisy. I said, okay, well, did they leave any messages for the surprise that was coming? And she's like, this is exhausting her. She's like, no. Now, no cell phones, okay? We had Morse code. We had nothing. So I didn't know what to do. I am in a bar. I am a pig in a bar. I am sweating like a pig in a bar. I could tell like my hair was like wet now. And I don't have enough money to get home. And I am not getting on a fucking subway with this outfit on. And my first stole, it's not gonna happen. I would get attacked just for the stole. So I see at the end of the bar, like right near the front door where the bar setup is, I see my ex-boyfriend. He's just sitting there because he lives in that neighborhood. And I don't know what to do because on one hand, he doesn't know it's me, obviously. If he did, it would be a little scary. But if I go over to him and ask him for, which is what I needed with some money, he's going to think I've lost my mind. But then I take a beat because I'm really desperate. I got to get home. So I think, okay, well, what would Miss Piggy do? There's a reason why she has Kermit in her life. It's not because she's like me, who always makes an apology when she walks in a room. So I said, okay. And I kind of hoofed it. Could barely see. I kind of hoofed it over to the bar. And I did take my head off. And I really was. I was covered in, like, I just ran a marathon sweat. And he says, oh my gosh, hi. Like as if it was like no big deal that I'm in a ridiculous costume. I think he's just trying to be nice. And I don't even like wait to answer. I say, David, I'm really hot and tired. I got stood up on a gig. I need $20 and a tequila and soda now. I was like, I didn't even know where it was like Reagan in The Exorcist. Like, your mother cooks sex. I didn't even know where the voice came from. And without skipping a beat, he gets the waiter over, he orders me a drink, he hands me the 20, I stick it in my bra, I shot it back. I was like, thank you, I gotta go now. He's like, I don't know what's happening. And I walk out into the not so fresh air of Manhattan on a Saturday hot night. And all I could think about is, well, it could have been Miss Piggy that gave me that kind of courage. But I honestly think, and I still think this sometimes when I'm really nervous and I walk into a place I don't belong, it was that. I was wearing this. And if you're ever really nervous about something or you're feeling insecure, just accessorize. Thank you.
Like a story out of Fame. There was a point I got a little scary when the guy was like, come into the closet. I'm like, uh-oh, Coco, don't do it. Don't do it. That proves that nobody in here has seen Fame. But anyway, so go home, watch Fame, Google Captain Kangaroo. You will also be surprised that he did not get in trouble for anything. So it's the... Or did he? One more time for Sandi Marx. All right, our next storyteller, he is a writer on Rob McElhenney's Admin Verse. He most recently... So was that your first Story Slam? So he went to his first Story Slam. Not only does he get picked, he wins it. So you will see him soon at a New York City Moth Grand Slam. I'm going to go over here and seethe with jealousies, but give it up for Azhar Bande-Ali.
When I was little, my mom and I would cast wishes on shooting stars. They weren't really shooting stars, they were just planes flying in the night sky, but it never really stopped us. My mom would catch a plane in the sky and call us out and be like, look, there's a plane. Maybe it's going to America. Maybe we'll be on that plane someday. Quick, make a wish. We'd all close our eyes and pray for a new life. We didn't really know what the new life was going to be about. But we knew it was out there 8,000 miles away and we wanted it. Night after night, the planes would fly and so would our wishes. Winter would turn to summer, summer would turn to monsoon, monsoon would turn to autumn, and we would keep wishing. Then, a few years later, we got the call. We were moving to America to start a new life. And I was freaking out. This picture was taken the week after we moved to America, after we landed in New York. I was 14 years old. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at a cute kid with a stunning fashion sense. But I was drowning in fear. A week after this picture was taken, I went to McDonald's for the first time. And I had this crisp $5 bill, and I was going to get my first taste of American capitalism. I stood in line behind this woman, and she moved ahead, and I followed her. And she took a couple of more steps, and I followed her, and then she turned around and started yelling at me. Apparently, the way people stand in line in America is not the same as they do in India. In India, standing in line is a bonding experience in that you're really bound to the person in front of you. You don't leave any space. In America, that's called crowding somebody, and it's offensive. I realized that if I was going to survive in America, I needed to get some help. Not the therapist kind of help, that comes later. I needed a guide. And so I reached out to a family friend, and I asked him to help me get the 101 on living in America. And so the Summit of the Nerds started. He told me everything about America. It started with the education system. We talked about the SATs. We talked about the GPA. We talked about detentions. We talked about the permanent record. And then at the end of it, he got into this like Yoda-style Zen mode, and I knew he was building up to something meaningful. And he went, "If I was you, I wouldn't make any friends with kids in school." I was like, okay, that's kind of a bold statement to make. What's up? And he said, yeah, these kids, they smoke, they drink, they do drugs, and they throw their lives away, and you deserve better. And I thought I saw the Matrix finally. I felt like Waze had just given me a notification that there was a cop ahead and I needed to slow down. I felt like I finally had the cheat code of a game that I really, really wanted to win. So I thanked him, I went home, and I kept that in the back of my head. My family decided to move to the suburbs of Atlanta to start our life together. And they enrolled me in high school. And y'all, I was thriving. Did you know teachers are not allowed to beat you in school in America? That was a revelation to me, okay? Teachers in America and India don't believe in therapy, so anytime they're angry, the students get it. School in America has lockers, so you don't have to carry around your books back and forth every day. It's such a luxury. And in the midst of it all, I was here just a shy, awkward Indian kid who was now afraid of making friends. One day, before phys ed, in the locker room, a fight broke out in my school. And it went on for way longer than it needed to. There was blood on the floor, everybody surrounded the kids that were fighting, and people were chanting, fight, 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 fight. And I figured these were the kids that I needed to be away from. I needed to avoid these kids. And I noticed the following week that the same kids were passing around pills in the middle of the day in the locker room. And I lost my shit. I went home and I cried to my mom and I said, Mom, if you make me go to this school again, I'm going to ruin my life just like these kids and it's going to be your fault. That poor woman sat me down and she said, look, I left my family behind for you. I did my part. Now it's your turn. And she was right. So I went to school, I sucked it up. I didn't make any trouble. But I knew how much I hated these people for not appreciating something that I came all the way here for. That summer, my family moved counties so I could go to a different school. And in this school, I found my best friend of 19 years. Let's call him Ali. Ali is a tall but gentle Indian man. He is the model Indian son. He volunteers, he studies hard. If you talk to him for a couple of minutes, you'll know he's special. Ali and I went on this Lord of the Rings quest one day because I procrastinated on my college application and it was due the same day, and if I didn't get the application out, I would not get into university. So him and I drove all throughout Atlanta trying to find a post office that was open till midnight so I could get my application post-dated so I could get into university. If he hadn't done that, I would not have gone to my dream school. I got in. Ali and I went to school together. He got me my first job. I was the groomsman at his wedding. Anything Ali did, I followed him blindly. A few years into our friendship, I realized I was no longer afraid of being in America because of him. 7 years into our friendship, Ali offered me the same pills I saw in high school that day. And I was devastated. I couldn't believe that the one person that I was supposed to avoid had become the centerpiece of my life. I couldn't believe how stupid I was. I couldn't believe how deceptive he was. So I went off. I told him about how could he do this to me? How long has this been going on? I wondered if he needed help. I went on a rant for 15 minutes. And he heard the whole thing patiently. And at the end of it, he said, dude, what are you talking about? These are Altoids. For 7 years. I thought drugs came in a red tin can. For 7 years, I could have had minty, fresh breath friends, but I had bad breath and no friends. I used to go to gas stations, see the red tin can, and run out because I thought the FBI was going to raid here any minute. I was so busy trying to avoid drugs that I never bothered understanding what they were. Somehow, at the age of 14, I missed Drugs 101 in India and in America at the same time. My life in America was so clouded by fear. I was building these walls that were keeping me away from interesting people, interesting experiences. But the walls started coming down slowly. The first time I went to a happy hour with my coworkers, I saw them drink and I realized that they were not turning into ruinous animals. They were still my friends. So then I was the DD to a trip to Napa with my friends. And that was fun. And then I babysat my friends who wanted to have an acid trip. And I saw them go through these emotional release in one afternoon that I could only imagine takes a lifetime. I feel like these experiences have given me a better appreciation for the American dream than the small box that I thought the American dream was. And I'm grateful for it. Throughout this time, though, I haven't lost my values, even though I've expanded my horizons. I still don't drink. I still don't smoke. And the only drugs in my life are Altoids.
Azhar, do not believe the lie. Altoids are very addictive. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. One more time for Azhar, everybody. All right. So, before we get to our final storyteller of the night, I got some housekeeping to do with you guys. I'm so happy you guys are here tonight. I really appreciate it. So, as Jimmy mentioned earlier, we are in the midst of the Gotham Storytelling Festival. And we actually have quite a few alumni from this show, like guests we have had on before, who have shows in the festival. Andy Tan and Michelle Carlo are doing a show together. Andrew McGill has a show that's running in the festival. All that you can find on frigid.nyc. Check it out. Also, there's a really unique show happening in this space tomorrow night with two people we've had on our show. Devin Sandiford and October 16 are getting together. They're producing a show called Unreeling Night Vision. It is a night of storytelling and rap between the two of them and everything. It's going to be a really, really interesting, fascinating show. They're both terrific. I encourage you guys to come out to that. It's going to be great. Now, if you're interested in more about our show, say you've been sitting tonight, you've been listening, it's like, oh, I've got like a crazy teenage story that I think would be a really good fit. Let us know about it. You can send your pitches in just like a 2 or 3 sentence pitch to awkwardteenageyears@gmail.com. We've had seasoned storytellers on this show. We've had people tell a story for the first time on this show. We will literally look at everything. So please send us your pitches. If you want to find out when future shows are happening and the guests we're having on, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter sometimes. I'm really bad at it, you guys. And then if you want to see our archives of our past shows, we've been doing this since 2020. We started in person. We moved to Twitch during the pandemic, and then we were finally lucky enough to come back and do it in person like this. All of those shows are saved at Awkward Teenage Years on YouTube. Go check them out. Thank you guys so much. So now, are you ready for our last storyteller? All right, our last storyteller, he is an author. He is a Moth Grand Slam winner. It was really cute because I was checking in with him when he got in and be like, hey, how do you want to be introduced? And he mentioned those two things. He's like, I don't know what else you want me to say. I'm like, it's what you want me to say. We're really excited. Please welcome Marc Abbott.
I actually went to the Fame School. We did not dance in the street. Oh my God, I had hair. This story happened on this day. Those of you who are horror heads know who that is. And that's Bruce Campbell, who played Ash in the Evil Dead series. This was my very first convention. There was a term I did not know back in the 80s, and it was called blurred. That meant I was a black nerd. And I embraced it because I loved all things horror, science fiction, books, movies, video games, you name it. To my parents' chagrin, I loved it. My parents, my father and my mother introduced me to horror in the literary world, my father in the cinematic world, and then he ran with it until we got to the slasher years, and then he was like, I'm out, you're on your own. And so for me, I knew in high school, I wanted to be a horror author. I knew that. So I read everything that was put in front of me, everything from Poe to Peter Straub, Stephen King, of course, but Clive Barker was it. When someone handed me the books of blood and I read those, I was like, this is my destiny. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be when I grow up. And my father was like, that's great. As long as it has a job with benefits and a pension to it, you do whatever you want. And I fell in love with Fangoria magazine. I had a crew with me. We all loved Fangoria magazine. We had posters in our lockers. And we were a clique. It was just like people knew us as the horror club. We just kind of meandered through, and people were like, oh, there they go. I was the normal looking one out of everybody. And when Fangoria announced that they were coming to the East Coast for the first time, we had to get tickets. We went down to Ticketmaster We stood in line at Ticketmaster, and we bought tickets at Ticketmaster. And this was like the golden ticket. Wasn't sure who was going to be there, but we needed these tickets. And then about a week before the convention comes out, they come out with the list. So there's going to be Christopher Lee. There's going to be Linnea Quigley, the Scream Queen. There is going to be Doug Bradley, who played Pinhead. There's going to be Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Clive Barker. I don't know if there's a word to describe the scream I made. You would have thought some boy band had come to town and I had completely lost it, but I was like, oh my God, Clive Barker is gonna be there. And I'm walking through the house in a haze. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna see Clive Barker, I'm gonna see. And my father's like, for God's sakes, he's just a writer, just calm down. I was like, no, you don't understand. This man is my future. This is what I'm going to be. And we all rally together. We go to this convention. This was when you bought a ticket and autographs and photos were free, not $65 to sit and meet people. But Clive Barker was on that list. And I'm taking pictures with everybody, the Gunnar Henson from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But there's no Clive Barker. And I'm wandering around there like, Christopher Lee is gonna be talking, and they're like, it's Christopher Lee. No, I'm here for Clive Barker. And then I get the news that Clive Barker will be coming out at 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. There's one problem. My mother decided, well, you need to be in the house by 6. Now, the convention is in the Pennsylvania Hotel on 34th Street, and I live in Brooklyn. And I'm looking at this thing, and my friend, and everybody knows my mother. My mother is that mother. My mother is the one that would say, you're not doing that, and then show up. She is the parent that comes to the house party screaming your name and then calling other people she sees as she's walking through. But we're in Manhattan, and my buddy's like, man, what are you gonna do? I was like, I'm staying. He's like, you better be home at 6. It's gonna take you at least 45 minutes by train to get home. I don't care. I'm staying. So he's like, here's a quarter. Go call your mother and tell her you're gonna be late. So I go to a payphone, go in and call my mom. It's like, listen, you know this thing with Clive Barker, it's starting at 5. Yeah? So I'm gonna stay for that, so I'll probably be home around like 6:30, 7 o'clock. Yeah, I'll see you at 6. No, Mom, you're not listening to me. Clive Barker is speaking, and then there's an autograph session afterwards. This is the whole reason why I bought this ticket. This is the reason why I'm here. 6 o'clock. Mom, you're not listening to me. I'm not coming home at 6. By 6. I will be home around 7. There's a disconnect here. I said 6 o'clock, and the switch goes off. You know what's crazy? You ask me to study, I study. You ask me to join these after-school programs, I do everything you tell me to do. You tell me that my grades are for me, not for you, but you break my neck. I ask for one thing in this life, is to meet Clive Barker. I'm staying here, and I'm not coming home till 7. You're gonna click. My buddies are like, I'm like, we're in Manhattan. She's not coming up here. She wouldn't do it. She doesn't even know where we are. You need to go in about 10 minutes. And then I'm like, man, I can't risk this. So I get home, and of course I get the tongue lashing of a lifetime. And my mother says, you know what? If it was meant to be, you will meet that man. I'm like, it's over, Mom. It's not going to happen. I missed it. I saw him go into the auditorium, and it's over. Thank you very much. Months go by, Clive puts out a new movie, and I truly went out to see the movie, was upset with the critics, wrote an angry letter to Fangoria, and I come home, and my buddy Mike is with me, who is cut out of that picture, by the way. And I pick up the mail, and we're in the house, and we're just in, and I'm going through the mail, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And he goes, what? I was like, look at this. It's an envelope with my name and everything on it, but look at the stamp. And he goes, there's no return address. And I was like, no, but look at the stamp. So he's like, who is that? I'm like, it's Queen Elizabeth. And he goes, who the hell would send you something from Canada? Queen Elizabeth. Give me this. So I open this thing, and I'm like, what is this? Dear Mark, thank you for the kind words on Nightbreed. I'm so glad you liked it. Best to you, Clive Barker. Again, I don't know what word you described the scream. But now I have now officially lost it. I'm screaming, I have called every friend that I have. They were like, that's bullshit, bring the letter in tomorrow. We have that. And of course, we're all holding it up to the light the next day, and they're like, I don't know, I see watermarks in there. I'm like, no, this is his signature, this is that. So Fango comes back to town. A few months later, and I'm like, we need to authenticate this. We're gonna authenticate this letter. So I take the letter, I go with my buddies, and Clive is gonna be there, and they had a complete room of Clive Barker stuff, just all of his stuff. And as fate would have it, Clive walks in with an army of people chasing him, and they put him right in the room and slam the door. So we walk up, and there's that guy. Yeah, what's up? Like, I had to say, yeah, pal, check it out. You're gonna go and stand on the line over there. We're not letting people in. Like, no, I need to find something out. So I take the letter out. I'm like, would you go in and hand this to Clive Barker? He goes, I'm not handing fan letters. I'm like, no, he sent me this, and I just need to authenticate it. And he looks at the letter, and he goes, walks in the room, comes back, he goes, who's with you? I said, my buddy's right here. Come in. So we go in, and there's Clive standing behind this table talking to somebody. And it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like we're all walking together like, what's that? What? Oh, look at that. Look, there she is. And he's holding the letter. And he looks at us and he goes, hi, which one of you is Mark? I'm like, me. And he goes, I'm Clive Barker. And I went, and I literally fall to my knees in tears. I hear my buddy Jeremy like, oh, for God's sake. My buddy Mike is like, maybe we should help him up. And Clive comes from behind the table, lifts me up, and he looks at me and he goes, it's okay. And I was like, and I can't speak. And I hear him, I see him look past me to my friend Jeremy, and he goes, he's a fan. You gotta give him a minute. And he sits me down, and now I'm trying to breathe because I am in the presence of greatness in my life. And once I have calmed down, I am then able to tell him how much his work means to me, how much I want to be a writer like him and all of this stuff. I gave him a 3-page handwritten horrible short story that I wrote, that I told him, just take this with you, just, if you want to give me a critique on it, whatever. And he signed everything we had. We leave, and I'm standing there, and there's this moment, if you've ever met someone that you look up to, not just somebody famous, somebody that you, honest to goodness, is like, this person changed the trajectory of my life. It took me a minute to just kind of soak it in, that I had just been in his presence. And I said, damn it. Mike is like, what happened? I was like, my mother was right. If it was meant to be, I was going to meet him. And I did. Thank you.
That's just too fucking cool, man. That is too cool. I can't get over how cool that is. Anyway, guys, that's our show. Thank you guys so much for coming up. Let's have another round of applause for Mark, for Sandy, for Srilatha, for Azhar, for Jeff. Give it up for Lauren in the booth, being our tech wizard tonight. Give it up for Jimmy, who let you guys into the house. My name's Grant. Thank you guys. Tell your friends. We're so excited. Thank you for coming to Awkward Teenage Years. Have a good night.